Plus, I've been sick, so I look a hot mess.
Gorgeous. Well,
So,
let's get started.
Okay, I'm going to press record.
Oh, I already did.
Oh, good. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we are on the yummy fourth chakra still. Yay. So excited. We were going to have a guest speaker today, as you guys know, but we had to reschedule her till next week. So the amazing Kate Rose will be with us next week. This week, we are going to be focusing on grief and compassion as we move through this beautiful chakra. So before check-ins, we have a couple of announcements. First and foremost, we have about a week left for enrollment in Sacred Soul Embodiment 5.0. It's not too late if you have friends or family that are ready to take on this endeavor. Hook them up with Candace. Now, you can always just send them our cell phone numbers too and have them text us. That's totally cool. I believe that's okay with Candace.
Yes,
So send them our cell phones, however you want to connect. We need your deposits for Sedona if you are going May 26th through 30th. We have a few spots left. If you would like to join, we just require your $500 down payment, and we'll get you hooked up and ready to go in May. And last but not least, in the new year, you are going to be seeing an email from us. You might see the email sooner, but this won't start till the new year. But we are going to allow and set the stage for our students here in this class to be guest teachers in our Sacred Soul or our Soul Evolution Facebook group. Which means basically if you have a gift or a talent or some sort of healing technique that you would like to share with our group, we will have a calendar that you can sign up for a spot to teach for up to an hour in the Facebook group, whether it's a meditation, a card reading, or something special you know about. So that's an opportunity for you to begin to step into your power. Yay. So look out for that. And Candace will lead us through check-ins.
Okay, so with everybody here, we'll just do 2 minutes because we're going to do a lot of sharing today. Because in grief work, the healing is in the sharing. So we'll go with 2 minutes. Who would like to go first?
I'm just gonna get mine out of the way.
Do it.
So I've been sick. My family was tested positive with COVID. Tested positive with COVID. I did not go and get tested. However, I've been sick. So I've just been in self-isolation the entire time. Mostly because I'm not going to go get tested. I don't want to be tracked and I don't want to go out in public. So that's what it's been. My daughter's been with her dad. So there you go. And so I don't want to admit that I have it. So I don't know if it's the reality of I don't want to admit that I have it, or the fact that I'm trying to heal my body without. So if I don't say I have it, I don't have it. I don't know. That's it.
Thank you, love. Yeah, it's a very harsh thing to admit since the world is COVID crazy right now. It's like almost like you're an untouchable, and it's an unfortunate experience. And so I'm sending you so much love and healing, hun. And I just pray that you take the right precautions to like supplements, everything that you need to keep yourself healthy and safe.
And the best part is I wasn't the many that were out partying and doing the wrong thing, as everyone says. I dropped off a cake, gave my niece a hug, and I left. It is what it is.
Yep.
So
well, take care of yourself, hun.
Thanks.
Thank you. All righty, who is next? Did you raise your hand, Astra? I think I missed it.
No, I'll just go there.
Okay.
Sorry, I heard something. I'm doing okay, kind of. I'm doing better now. I did reach out to Candace and Nikayla, but I feel like I'm a little unable to like appreciate and value these like good things that are coming my way and changes. I feel like I'm kind of stuck in like some old mindsets, or I don't know, just not able to like give myself what I need, even though like I can. But things are, I guess, technically good. I've like got a lot of opportunities coming my way, and I'm excited for this year to wrap up and new things to happen next year. So yeah, I'm sort of just in a weird space the last week or two. I don't really know how to feel, or I don't know. My emotions have been a little numb, but I'm getting through it.
Thank you, Astra. And actually today's talk about grief and compassion is really going to support you, I feel, and touch like that numbness to unleash it. Thank you. Michelle, you said you wanted to go next. Are you available, Michelle?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, good. I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself. So I'm actually kind of excited. I didn't realize or didn't pay attention to the fact that it was about grief today, but I had an awesome Thanksgiving. Lots of amazing recognitions, I guess, came out of Thanksgiving about expectations and family dynamics. And I've been working through some things with regards to my dad. And my dad died he died 16 years ago. And he was my best friend. It was just he and I. He raised me as a single dad. And so I had a couple of ahas. I haven't reached out to Candace and Nikayla with my follow-up yet, but I had some really great conversations. One with my godfather, who was my dad's best friend since they were 15, 16 years old, and another one with one of my dad's ex-girlfriends, who they were still friends over the years, and she and I have always remained close, and just had some really good openings. And so I think today's class is going to be really good for me in that way. So that's all. I'm complete. Nothing specific. Sorry.
Thanks, Michelle. Awesome share, actually. I feel the aliveness in your voice, and I can feel a shift and change in you already.
Yeah, that's why.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, let's see who's next. Come on, beauties.
I'll go next.
Thank you.
I've been feeling good. We are at remote learning for my school job, which I'm thankful for. I'm glad that I still have that job, and I'm glad that I'm able to be at home and be with my daughter. And I feel like I'm able to just work on myself more. So I'm just thankful that, I still have my job and that we're able to work from home. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling very motivated this week. And I feel like I'm just getting settled into all the changes. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
Thank you, love. And you said you went to California, right?
Yeah, I went to go see Marla, so saw my sister.
How was that? And you went with your boyfriend, right?
Yeah, it was good. It was a nice break, and it was a good time to be with each other, and it was good. I was happy to see my sister. So
Yay, awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, who'd like to go next? We're starting to see the faces. Step right up. Courtney or Tway? If you're speaking, Courtney, you're muted, honey. Nope, you're still muted. Not yet. Bummer. I wonder if it's your earphone thingies.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, that's why. It's my headphones because I'm tutoring also. So I'm simultaneously doing things. Let's see. I spent Thanksgiving in Pennsylvania. I was held up in the guest room basically the entire weekend because I really didn't want to spend too much time with my parents. My mother did give me a bit of grief about, decent men, how I can't choose decent men. And I needed the time and the space to be alone and just to reflect and just to be alone because I have a 5-year-old attached to me 24/7 pretty much. So it's nice to have that alone time. So I got to reflect. I got to kind of do what I wanted to do, even though it was in the woods. And New York City schools are now, at least the high schools and middle schools, we are remote indefinitely, which is nice. So I get to save a lot of money in regards to babysitting, and I get to take her to school and pick her up, do the things that I've missed out on for years. I get to finally do, and I get to not have to commute into the city, which is great. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be the first real holiday season where like I'm not baking anything. I'm not going anywhere. Christmas Day, she'll be with her dad. I'm like looking forward to going to church and then throwing on the pajamas and just watching Christmas movies like all day because that's what I used to do when I was 15. And just, yeah, I can't wait. Maybe New Year's go out to the city and see the ball drop, which I've never done by myself at all. And yeah, I mean, I feel okay. I had a scare. I had my little cancer scare, which is not a scare anymore. So that's pretty much it. Just happy that that is over. That's a huge relief. I'm complete.
Thank you. I love your share and being able to take care of yourself and find some alone time for yourself and like planning out what you're going to do already. I did the same. It feels good. I'm so excited for you. I'm glad you had some really good moments. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tway, you are our last lady.
So I had a good Thanksgiving. I went home and spent time with my family. I didn't really do much, but I ate a lot of food and binge watched Harry Potter, which is like my favorite movie when I was a child. And it feels good not able to think about different things and what I have to do and just sit there and relax. And it was interesting that I didn't feel the need to buy anything on Black Friday. Normally, I would have like a whole list of things like, oh, I want this, I want that. But then I didn't feel the need this time to get anything. And so I was able to save a lot of money this time. And I'm complete.
All right. I love the whole relaxation thing and being able to not think about anything. We should all be doing that more often. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. I think we have all gone. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to kick it off straight away into grief. You ready? All right. So grief is one of those emotions that we don't really want to express. And I already feel it. I'm already attached to that grief energy and it's there. So I may or may not get into an emotional feeling today. So I'm just going to forewarn you. Grief is basically this place that's like this unknown, right? When we feel it, it captures us and it's hard to get out of it. And one of the pioneers that I love that has written a lot about grief is Francis Weller. And he has this beautiful book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And reading it has really put my heart and life in perspective, because, you know, oftentimes we get into that fourth chakra wound where everyone's betraying us. And so it's everyone's fault that this world's a mess, that I'm not loved, or I don't have friends. And so we blame. But when we come to like really opening that heart and being vulnerable with ourselves, we feel that sorrow that's deep within. And it's all these things that we've missed out on or things we've lost. And what I love about him is he goes into the grief as an experience of our soul, because the soul is, it's colorful. It's brought down into this earth for bright vibrancy, but also with it is the unfortunate loss of things here on earth. It's not permanent, right? Our form changes and it dies and it shifts, and we meet people and we lose people. And so we feel this internal grief that literally shapes our lives, but we don't allow ourselves to feel it, but yet it's there, right? And when you can tap into that thread, like I'm feeling it now, it's overwhelming, right? And yet it makes us alive and it rebuilds us. And so in times of grief, even though it's like shrinking us down and we feel so powerless, it literally is building us up, ready for a new life, a new chapter. But it takes time, right, when we go through grief. And it's really important to acknowledge that we have grief. And so what Francis Weller has created is the 5 gates of grief. So if you're someone that really isn't like in tuned with their grief or in tuned with their feelings, this is so important, because oftentimes we relate grief with loss, maybe with the death of somebody or someone just leaving our lives, but it's so much more than that. And so I want to share with you the 5 gates to help you understand the potency of how this grief really affects our lives. And the first one, the first gate, and by the way, these gates are really this opportunity to acknowledge the many ways that we feel sorrow, so that then it doesn't lie hidden anymore, that we don't have to go through isolation with this and feel alone, that literally it is there for us to be in community with, right? So the first gate is everything we love, we lose. Everything we love, we lose. And it's so true. I mean, from our pets to things we buy, it all deteriorates, right? And then we get rid of it, we give it away to someone, and then we get something else. From our partners, whether we form this really strong bond and we love them, and maybe we lose them to death, or we lose them to another person, right? It's always changing. So everything we love, we lose. But this is like the champion of our lives, right? To love is to lose. And yet that's where we are on that edge of sorrow, because it's like the greatest, amazing moments of our lives to like the deepest, most despairing sorrows that we can experience in just one moment with somebody, right? And it is a fearful thing to love, right? It's like, well, why would I want to go into love and experience this inevitable loss? Because there's just so much joy in it, right? There's so much life in it that we can experience, that we go head first into it sometimes head over feet, right? In the hopes that we just feel this deeper connection. And that's what grief is that deep connection of who we are at a very cellular level, that we all are literally going to be gone, right? The second gate is something that we don't really acknowledge all the time, except for here in Sacred Soul Embodiment as you're going through the school. It's the places that have not known love. And what I mean by that is that we literally wrap ourselves in shame, in fear, in all this guilt and humiliation, and we just stuff it down, right? And we push it out to the ends of the earth, never to be dealt with or seen again. And yet these are the very pieces of us that are grieving to be loved, that are grieving to want to be seen, and yet we ourselves push it far, far away from us. And so we want to begin to like grieve over these pieces that we've experienced in our lives so that we can like bring it to the light so that it can be remade and transformed through the grief and shift it into a new, right? But we're holding on to it and we keep stuffing, which then, Miss Astra, we get numb. We get so numb to ourselves that even the joys of life are foreign to us because we can't feel a damn thing, right? Because we're just stuffing. And that keeps us from the very living aspect of our lives. So we want to go into these unknown places, which many of you are, but we fight, right? We don't want to bring any of this dark shit up, but it's there, and it's there for us to like look at and bear witness to and grieve over, because they've caused so much pain in our lives, and we can just make it anew. Okay. The next gate is the sorrows of the world. Now, this is something that we all are experiencing. I'm so tuned in, I'm sorry. I'm like in the grief right now. Whew. Okay. So the sorrows of the world, it's like what we're experiencing right now with like so much change on our planet, from this COVID to our politics to the destruction of the forests to like the elimination of habitats and animals. It's like, woo, if you can like tune into that for a moment, just feel the Mother Earth and all the inhabitants that are here. It's like really overwhelming, right? But yet it is a fundamental dilemma that we have to experience, because as Buddha says, there is suffering on this planet, and there's always change and there's always growth. And so we're experiencing the inevitable suffering of our world, which is very much connected, right? When we feel that sorrow and grief of the world, we're seeing we're in our own selves, we're dying, and in the own earth is dying, and we're changing and transforming, but we have to build a new relationship to it so it becomes sustainable, right? And that's where in that grief, and we feel all that, we come to action, right? We're being called to action and to be activists within this world and begin to heal it on deep levels and acknowledge that grief and acknowledge that all this crap is happening and that we've acted without consideration or compassion for all living things. And Frances Weller shared this woman, her name is Naomi Nye, and she's a poet, and she talks about how can we stand the sufferings of the greater aspect of the world. And she says, before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you can see the size of the cloth that we have all made. And that's where we're at, right? We're all weaving these threads together. And that's actually what connects us. And that's one thing that Frances Weller talks about, is that these sorrows, it's like how we know we are one and not separate. We're not alone in any of this. We just suffer silently and we don't speak it out. The fourth gate is what we have expected but did not receive. Now, this is definitely a conundrum of our soul, because, we come here with these beautiful gifts ready to be born and cultivated and nourished and expressed. And yet we are diminished in many ways from really being our truest selves and who we are authentically, because of this man-made world with laws and rules that govern a society of way it should look like and should be. And so with all these gifts inside, we want to bring it forth and share it with the community, but then it's often, you know, stepped on, spoken bad about, trolls get you. It's like all these crazy things where people are also in pain and grieving, but they can't feel their grief, so they then put it out on other people. And so our innate gifts, like we're wanting to express it so deeply within our bones, but we're not able, right? Because of that wonderful world that we've created, that we've all agreed to, and it's been created years and years and years of time. But now we're awakening, right? We're awakening to our feelings, and we're seeing like, no, this is not who I want to be anymore. My soul is in charge. My soul wants to produce this out there. And so many of us are stepping over that bridge and allowing those gifts to really be seen. But it is a brave journey, right? We must be courageous to overcome the sorrows of the world, to really step into the light and allow ourselves to be seen. And now the last one is ancestral grief. And this is something that, especially with the Me Too movement, and as well as Black Lives Matter, as well as so many things, like I'm watching this kind of intense show right now by Penny Dreadful. It's like the city of Los Angeles, and it's intense. Don't watch it if you don't like intense movies, but it definitely showcases the world of even the Mexicans and the Hispanics, of like all the things that they had to endure at that time. And then I think of all the Koreans and the Japanese, it's like everywhere, right? And so there's this intense mourning in our ancestral lines that we feel deep in our bones. And as we like acknowledge their grief, we begin to clear it within our DNA to free them and create a new life that's not attached to what they've been fighting for. Because now the fight is over and we have choices that bring in a new way of being, but we have to see that that is our privilege, right? That was the gift of the ancestor sorrow, is that now we have the privilege to make a change, but not from fighting and not from causing more deep grief and pain, but from really this love and compassion in our hearts. And so as we digest the grief of our ancestors and make things new, we begin to eliminate that sorrow and help heal that world and come into this new place. So as you can see, we have so much to grieve about, right? And if we don't acknowledge them, then it just lies dormant here. And I don't know about you, but this eclipse season, especially with that full moon yesterday, it's like, woo, like so intense. And it was in Gemini. So you have this idea of perfection of who you are. And then this other side of you that's like not feeling right, like still like a failure, still like you're not doing things well. And it's like both there. And this is the piece that's needing the love and affection of this one, and the grief of change and transformation. So, you know, in our bringing grief to light, it is essential to who we are as humans and as souls. It is a part of our life. And if we don't acknowledge the grief that is within, it will destroy us, like it has so many people. But we need space for it, right? And we need a way to go through it safely. And so I'm just going to share with you 5 quick things that have that really bring us back to, you know, being in friendship with grief. And one is building the capacity to stay present, right? Like if we go back into the past of things, then we lose sight of where we are. If we go too far in the future, we lose sight of where we are. So we must always stay present with where we are in our grief. Otherwise, it's like just so intense, but we can deal with what we have right here, right now, right? Because we have that nurturing capacity for ourselves. The second one is being able to create meaningful rituals. And that's why funerals exist, right? That's why in actually in Greece, like people are grieving and wearing black for a whole year so that no one has this mistaken idea of like, you're feeling good. It's like letting them just be in their sorrow rather than saying, hey, are you okay? It's like, you don't want to ask that. It's like, just let them be in what they experience and they'll open up to when they're ready. Next is being in a community of friends, right? And I'm hoping that here with this group that you have found your community with your friendships and accountability partners that you can open up and share some of your grief and allow yourself to be seen so it can be transformed. And also number 4 is benevolent solitude. Like there is a time for being with yourself and it's okay that you're with yourself. You know, there's all those movies that like, you know, they're with themselves and they're have food all over the place and someone comes in, it's like, let's get out of here, let's go drink, right? Like that's not always the best idea. It's like you want to sit with them in their grief, like be there with them. I've had an experience with my cousin who had lost a child and she couldn't do anything, but all I could do there was lay beside her and cuddle her. And that was the most loving and supportive thing that I could do. I didn't say any words. I just was there. And last is stretch out into your higher selves, because the thing is that we have a beautiful capacity to hold this grief. And it does transform us so that we can grow and be made anew into this other aspect of who we are becoming. And that's that phoenix rising from the ashes. So develop a living relationship with your grief. Know that it's in there and honor that part of you because it's there. And we'll talk more about how to really go through this grief, which is what Nikayla is going to talk about next. And we're going to have some shares and then go into compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. I think it's so interesting as we dive deeper into grief, all of the different things that we mourn, that we grieve, right? So I want you guys to take a minute. Today's one of those days when we kind of take the caps off and we let ourselves feel, okay? The thing is, everyone has grief. Everyone on the whole planet has grief. It's just some of us choose to feel it and acknowledge it, and some of us choose to avoid it. But grief, when I see grief inside of a person's system, it shows up as like a big rock. It's the only way I can describe it. It's solid, it's hard, and it's usually black. It's almost always in the heart space, sometimes like more in the back wedged into shoulder blades, but almost always in this heart space. I have seen grief before in the second chakra, but only once. So I want everyone today, number 1, to be brave. Okay. And I want you to know both Candace and I are grieving now, our own separate things. And it's really scary. And I'll share with you my grief process in a moment. But first, I want you to feel into yours. So I'm going to have everybody grab a writing utensil and some paper. And I want you to sit here for a moment. Nice and grounded in your body, breathing. Astra, I want you to unclench your jaw. Get it nice and loose. Michelle, loosen up a little bit, especially your shoulders. Charmaine, let yourself feel. Anna, let yourself feel. Okay. I want you to bring to your mind's eye. So let's close our eyes for a second. I want you to sink into your heart space. So take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold at the top. Send all this air to your heart. Breathing it into your heart space. And from your heart, exhale. Continue to breathe from your heart space. Candace, relax your forehead a little. Sink into the grief. And I want you to find that grief inside of your heart. It could be a small little pebble. It could be a marble. It could be a bigger bouncy ball or a solid rock. It could take up your entire heart cavity. Whatever it is, I want you to feel into that grief. Sink into it. It's not an enemy. Like a scared little child, your grief wants to be expressed. It wants to be felt, to be acknowledged. Breathe if you're feeling resistant. You are so safe here. And as you feel into this grief, I just want you to start sending it some love. Acknowledge that it's here. Whatever that looks like for you. Knock on the door of this grief. Let it know that you're here to witness it. As you see beautiful green energy begin to swirl around the grief, permeating through this stone. Allow this green energy to begin to shrink this grief down just a tiny bit, enough to make it manageable. Tell your grief that you're going to be working with it for the next several weeks to heal, to dissolve, and to acknowledge. Relax again into the grief. There's no need to be tense, no need to be scared. And as you breathe into it one last time, thank it for being here. Let it know that it can stay as long as it needs to. That you're not rushing it. You're not forcing it out, but that you'll be here by its side as it heals. Take a deep breath in and out. And the moment you open your eyes, I want you to take pen to paper. And I want you to just write a love note, maybe 5 or 6 sentences to your grief. Anything it might need to hear, anything it might need to feel or experience from you, just write it down. I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes. Notice if you're still in your body or if you've left for a minute. You have about 30 more seconds to write. Okay, you can go ahead and finish up. We're going to share these a little bit later. And I'm really, really proud of the courage you showed today. I felt you guys go in. I felt you feel it. I'm really proud of you. And this is the thing to remember about grief. It's a daily practice as we're working to heal it. There's a reason I didn't just say, let's dissolve it and let it leave your body, because it doesn't work that way. We have to nurture grief. We have to acknowledge and accept it, and then it leaves on its own over time. But the thing about grief, it's one of those emotions. It's like standing in an ocean and allowing, and I know full force what this feels like, ask Candace, and just having the waves crash over you and over you. And sometimes you get lost under the waves and you lose direction and you can't breathe and it's really scary. And you have to pop up and there's a moment of calm and then another wave comes back. And then it might be calm for maybe 10 minutes. And if you're still out there, the wave's going to come crashing back down over you. And that's the thing about grief. Just like in the ocean, if we choose to move under and through with the grief, if we choose to go with the waves instead of just standing there waiting for it to hit us because we've denied it so long, it's going to knock us off our feet. We're going to get salt water all up in our nose. We might hit our heads on some rocks. But if we move with the grief, move with the tides, if we can find that flow, it goes so much more smoothly. It's still uncomfortable. It's still a little scary. You have to be on your toes and aware, knowing what your feelings are, acknowledging that grief is still there and that any point a billboard or a text or a song might bring that grief rushing back into you. But instead of numbing it out or pushing it down, you're going to be with it. And you're going to let it flow over you until it finds the calm again. Okay? So I've told you what grief looks like and I told you what it can feel like. But I really want you to acknowledge, like Candace said, the different ways in which we can grieve. It's really hard, especially for women, to acknowledge grief because we shove down so many of our feelings to please other people or to get our things done. And grief is one of those things that we can't ignore, right? And so as you grieve, I want you to be aware, like Candace said, you can grieve loss of life, but you can also grieve loss of relationships, loss of identities. Right now, what I'm grieving is the relationship with my parents my inner child never had. I'm not grieving for me today. I'm grieving for her in the past. I'm letting that go and I'm letting myself feel it. And it's deeply painful. But as I acknowledge it and as I sit with myself, I find that compassion, which is what we'll go into next, to be able to heal it. So I want you guys to take a moment to stir yourselves around. Okay, we're not moving to an uplifting, happier feeling. We're sitting with this, okay? But I want you to stir it around in your body a little bit. See if you can ground it in. Because right now it's just kind of hanging out in our heart. Let's see if we can ground it down. So pull it down through your third. Breathe it down through your sacral, into your root. And let's just ask our earth, Mama Earth, please pull this grief through us. Hold it with us. Help us carry it, heal it, to be beside it. And as you feel that grief being held by both you and the mother now, fully supported, nurtured and held in this moment, know that you will be okay, that it's okay not to be okay, that you are safe and you are held here. Beautiful. All right. While we're still here, Candace is going to lead us through a share.
All right, beauties. We are going to share our experience with grief. And, you can pick a couple of them or you can just pick one. but we want to know what you're going through and what you're grieving through that may be silently still lingering within you, or that you've been able to process and share it with other people. But this whole exercise is actually in two folds. One is being able to share and be witnessed, and two, for the witnesser to really have and hold space for the other person and have deep compassion and really listen to their story without checking out, without escaping, without like fumbling with other things. It's like really being so present for the person that's sharing, because we're going to be doing an exercise with that, with compassion, a little bit later. So I want you guys to be really fully listening to each person as they share. And I'll be doing a timer for 1 minute. And I know it's going to be tough, but allow yourself to just be witnessed. Okay, so let me grab my timer. Who is willing to go first? I'll go first, so then
I was just going to say that.
I'll go first. Dang it. I'll give you guys the experience. Okay. So what I'm grieving through right now is a long time sexual trauma that's showing up in my uterus, and something I pushed down for a long time that has not let me conceive. And so I'm working with infertility. I'm working with precancerous cells, and I'm afraid I'll never be a mom. I'm afraid I won't heal and it'll develop into cancer. And I'm afraid I won't feel that vitality because I'm really stuck with the old sexual trauma still consuming me. And that's what I'm dealing with. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Who's next?
I'll go.
Thank you.
I'll go. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. So mine is layered, and it's layered in the relationships with men in my life. And Kyla, when you were doing the visual with the grief stones, mine were 3 marbles, and it was my divorce with CJ, and my breakup with Rob recently, and my dad. And what came up for me was just the loss of time, the loss of love, and the loss for my boys of a strong male relationship in their lives. Strong, supportive, loving male relationship in their lives. I'm complete.
Thank you, Michelle. Just so you know, I'm actually giving everyone a little bit longer I think we need more time than a minute. So well, we're doing 2. And thank you, Michelle, for sharing. Who's next?
I'm grieving a family dog that we lost that I didn't get to say goodbye to. I felt it triggers thoughts that I will not get to say goodbye to people who are very close to me. There's always been this like hole related to that loss of control, but also just loss without goodbye, and that's really hard for me.
Thank you, Astra. Who is next?
I know it's really scary, and I just want you to remember expression is what sets grief free.
I think with me, I've been grieving multiple things. And I think like with Michelle, I just have layers because like yesterday I was reading this thing about when you close your eyes and reading a book that my pilot recommended, and you put your hand across the table and you reach for food, and what was the response you get? It's like not having that parental guidance. So for me, I'm always on my own. So that's what it is. Even being sick, I'm on my own. And I just have come to that acceptance. And when my grandma died a year ago, it was just a constant reminder. So I moved here in my place in 2017. And I've just have worked through that, where I remind myself I'm not alone, but I always feel alone. And so I know I have you guys and I understand that. It's just, regardless if I have people in my life, that's just how I feel. So I'm trying to grieve those relationships, because even from just an early age, that's how it's been.
Thank you for sharing, Charmaine. And one thing I do want to say is you don't need to justify anything. This is your grief. And regardless of the higher ways of being, it's part of the grief process. We acknowledge you and hear you. Love you. Okay. Who is next? I believe we have Anna, Courtney, and Tway.
I'll go. I guess for me, I'm grieving just my self-worth and just who I see as myself as a person, just so negative. And Yeah, I just feel like I haven't been able to like really be myself, and I'm 35 and I'm just now figuring out who I am. And so I'm just like, I feel like it's just like a lot of time lost, and yeah, just, really just trying to find my self-worth.
Thank you, Anna. And Courtney and Tway, you are left.
I'll go. I guess mine is also in layers. From my divorce to grandfather and uncle who have been dead for almost 20 years that I can't shake, to being alone, having no family, having no friends, and not really having the support, and really just doing everything on my own since I was a kid. Not having like my grandfather and uncle around to help and protect me, and to really just be there, even like for my daughter. Not having that loving husband, and just being divorced or divorcing and doing it again, just doing it all on my own with no help. I'm used to it, but it sucks.
Thank you for sharing, Courtney.
I don't know what I'm really truly grieving about. I know that it's been a while and it's accumulated up over time, and I've been ignoring it. And that's all I can say.
Thank you for sharing, Tway. Thank you, all of you, for really putting your hearts out there and being vulnerable, because that is where the heart breaks open, right? And we're allowing it to be seen in whatever capacity we're willing to show up. We feel you, so thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into compassion. Okay, so yep, grief can feel like anger sometimes too. It's one of the cycles of grief. So grief isn't one of those things where we're like, okay, let's raise our vibrations. Notice how we're talking. We're not melancholy, we're not Eeyore-ish, right? But we're holding space for the grief. You notice there's that sacredness about this. We all know how powerful it is, how scary it is to share. And when we do, that's where we set ourselves free. So I need everyone to grab either a pillow or a stuffed animal. Yes, please. Oh, Tway, yours is so big. Okay. So this is how I used to hold my son when he was a baby. And if you have a pillow, just pretend I put my hand right under his bum and I put my hand behind his head and I held him in front of me so I could look in his gorgeous eyes. So hold your pillow like that, or your stuffed animal like that, okay? And I'm not going to look at you because I'm going to do this too. So just follow along with me. And I want you to look at your stuffed animal or pillow, holding it very lovingly, very supportive. And I want you to try to connect with it. Let this stuffed animal be your grief. We're going to find compassion for this. We're going to start to bounce it up and down a little bit like we would a baby. Let yourself feel it. Connect with it. Asher, I want you to look right into that bear's eyes, okay? Feel it. And I want you to tell this grief, as you're nurturing it, as you're holding it, that you're accepting, loving, whatever it needs to hear. Say those words as you stare right at it. And bring it up to your chest, holding it just like a baby. We're going to hold our grief here. We're going to nurture it. And we're going to be with it. Tenderly, lovingly. There's nothing we can do to change it. We just get to be with it. Pour all of your heart into this grief as you hold it close, nurturing it, rocking it. For the rest of the call, I want you to hold this stuffed animal or pillow close to you, tenderly. Because this grief, just like this stuffed animal, is real. It's just that it's inside of us. And it's much easier to look at a stuffed animal and acknowledge it, right? Than to look at our grief, our pain, our hurt. It's so much easier to say, oh, Candace is having a hard day. Let me call her and text her and avoid my own grief. Oh, I have so many people on Marco. Let me look at them. Let me run these errands for my parents. Or my friends really want to hang out with me. Right? We kind of just throw our grief aside and we let ourselves be busy. So I like these tangible reminders that we hold with us, that we carry with us to nurture and love and to find compassion and space for throughout each and every day. And like I said, sometimes it's just going to be hanging out with you and you're going to be having fun. And other days it's going to hit you like a tidal wave. And the only thing you're going to be able to do is hold it and lay in bed and cry with it. And all of it's okay as long as we acknowledge it, as long as we're aware that it is here and that it is valid and that there is nothing good, bad, right, or wrong about it. It just is with us and it deserves to be heard. And when we can do that, when we can not only carry around our grief, right, but we can also witness, like I see so clearly, Astra's grief, it's right on her shoulder. She's holding it in her arms. Do you think I'm gonna run at Astra with some harsh energy right now? No, I'm gonna be with her. I see Tway leaning into hers. You think I'm gonna run at her with anger or sharp energy? No, but yet we do that with other people, right? And that's what compassion is all about. First and foremost, our feelings. This tangible reminder that we're experiencing grief right now, that we deserve nurturance, time and space and attention. But also the reminder that Candace, Charmaine, Tway, Anna, Courtney, Michelle, Astra, Nakayla, we're all experiencing this. And as we hold space, it doesn't mean we have to placate or pity or anything. It just means we're aware. My sister's grieving right now. So I need to hold space for her like I would want her to hold space for me while I'm holding my teddy bear. Okay? So as you think of compassion, as you think of your grief, I want you to come back to yourself and these tangible objects and acknowledge that this is with you.
Thank you, Nikayla. I'm going to go a little bit into compassion for others. And the person that I love that has talked a lot about this is Thich Nhat Hanh. And he is all about compassion for others. And the thing is that he's like, when someone is grieving, you just be with them, right? And that's what I was saying earlier, just be with them. And it's not trying to fix them. It's not trying to like make them feel better. It's just to be with. Because sometimes in compassion for another, we literally, like just like we did in this call, is to hold space for them, you know, and they'll start saying, I'm sorry, I'm experiencing this. I'm sorry, I have to tell you this. But the greatest gift you can give them is your presence. And, you know, there's this learning about listening that is really powerful. And there's 3 different ways that sometimes we listen, right? And the first way is to agree with. And so we're sitting there and we're like agreeing with what they're saying, but it's already a notion of like, hurry up. I hear what you're saying. I know it already. Let's get over it, right? You can't rush grief like that. We can't just agree with and just help them get to the end game, because there isn't an end game with grief. The second way is to disagree with, right? And that's where we can start the arguments and start saying, well, you shouldn't be grieving over that. Like, he's a fool. What are you thinking about? Blah, 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 right? And so we disagree, and then we create like a tension where with somebody that then they're not feeling heard. And so then they retreat deeper inside of themselves, and then you lose them, right? Because then they don't feel safe around you. And then the third way, which is, you know, a way that we all kind of aspire to do, is to be with. And when you're being with somebody, there is no agreement, there is no disagreement. You're literally just being with, and you're listening for the essence of their soul in their words. And as you've listened to each person here, you can hear like what's really important to them, right? You didn't have to disagree or agree with what they're saying. You know, sometimes we think with our own lives, and then we then say, well, I know that feeling too, because I did this and this. But then you get, again, you lose sight of like the person that really is really needing like that support and love. And so it's better to not even say like your own experience. It's just to be with, right? And so, and that is oftentimes the greatest, most amazing healing experience you can give to anybody. And that develops compassion for others and yourself, because when you can hear somebody and hear yourself, we have layers and layers and layers of crap that we're all dealing with. People just deal with it in a different way, as you notice with these wounding patterns, right? We have so many defense mechanisms, and each wound interacts with each other to like karate chop and block and kick all at the same time. And yet when you can be with somebody and hold compassionate space, like that's where the fight stops. That's where we are able to like really be present with either their angers or their fears or their grief, any of the feelings that they're experiencing, right? Because we can hold space for it. But oftentimes we can't hold space for it if we can't hold space for our own grief. So it always starts with you. And if you can hold space for your grief, you can hold space for others without having to fix them and justify things and make them feel better. And same with anger, same with any emotion that you might have. If you can hold space for these things, then you can hold space for others. And anger, like Nikayla said, is part of the grieving process. Like it actually is a step above grief, because it creates movement and fire and actionable steps that allows us to do something towards what we want to create in life, rather than when we're in grief, we're just, you know, grieving and in that state of like non-movement and not seeing where we can go or what we can do. We're kind of stuck. But anger brings us to movement and to action and to rise. It just depends on what, you know, you begin to do at this phase, whether it be blame or shaming others or hurting others, right? Like anger can be a useful tool just to like get out of the slump. But when you hurt others, then that's where it causes issues. And that's where most people stay, because they stay in solitude. They don't share. No one gets to hear your story, right? And you don't get to let it out. And so you're dealing with it on the inside. So then it's harder to hold compassion, because if someone's in a state of grief and you hear it, it might touch yours and unleash it. And like, that's a scary thing, right? So we have to go inward first and deal with all of it and be with it. And that way we can be with others. And now we'll go into a short exercise with Nikayla around compassion.
Okay, this is a special part, and I think it's a really important way to recognize the way you show up in others. So I want you guys to share. We're going to do probably 1 to 2 minutes again. And I want you to share what it was like holding space and having compassion for the other sisters who shared. Notice, did you want to reach out and hug them? Did you immediately come up with 50 solutions to help them? Or were you really just present with them in the moment? Did you have transference? Maybe did you hear their story and it brought up grief within you too? Whatever your experience was, hold it, share it. You're safe here. There's no judgment here. And you can just unmute when you're ready.
Can I start?
Please do.
With Candace, I started to cry and I felt compassion, and I also had very similar both stories with both Nikayla and Candace. So I related, cried, and brought up stuff for me. With the others, I felt compassion and wanted to hug them. I wanted to hug you too also, but but I just felt like I wanted to I felt really I was drawn because it related to my story also.
Beautiful. Thank you, Charmaine.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next?
I'll go. It's Michelle. It's funny, as you were going through the list of how did you respond, I'm like, yep. It actually was almost a roller coaster for me. It's like one moment I felt like reaching out and holding them, just holding. And then there were moments where I retreated and just didn't want to be there, didn't want to hear, didn't want to be open. And then there were moments where I just sat and just was there for them. So I'm going to watch again and see what those specifics were and look and see what it triggered in me.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Michelle. Who's next?
I can go next. I truly think of what each of you is wonderful people, and it makes me sad to see you guys go through such suffering, and I just want to hug every one of you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
When I hear other people speak about what they're going through, I
immediately feel what they're feeling. And it always brings tears. Like I get very emotional, physically emotional. But I feel how they're feeling. And sometimes it can trigger emotions in me about my life, but more so it's focused. It's like I'm just a second person. They're feeling how they're feeling, without the aspect of the suffering. But I feel like I empathically just understand. I understand how they're feeling, and then want to be there with them. I don't necessarily, I'm not launched into wanting to physically hug them. I don't know if that helps or if I want to do that, but I do enjoy holding people, and but I just like to be there with them, feel like letting them feel how they're feeling.
Beautiful. Anna, did you want to share? Or Courtney?
Yeah, I'll share. I could really relate to Astra. For me, I felt like I immediately felt emotional, and it, like, you know, it brought tears to my eyes hearing what everyone was going through. But yeah, and that it made me feel like I had compassion for them, and I just wanted to hug you guys. So
Thank you, love. Courtney?
I definitely felt compassion because I wanted to hug everybody, and I could definitely feel the emotion in the room for sure, but definitely like want to give everybody a hug.
Beautiful. You're all doing so well with your stuffed animals. I can feel the connections you're creating. And I really also just want you to witness and observe. Is there a difference? And this is something you're going to ruminate on this week, but is there a difference between the way that you showed up in compassion for yourself versus the way you showed up in compassion for others? I find a lot of times we're harder on ourselves and we don't give ourselves as much room to grieve. We're constantly, last week when I was going through some grieving, I was still like, that's great, Nikayla, but you still got stuff to do, you know? Whereas if it was Candace I was looking at, I would have been like, take the whole week off. I love you. You can do this, right? But for myself, it wasn't the same. And so I want you to really acknowledge that and see what needs to kind of change as you show up in compassion for yourself as well. But you all did so freaking amazing. I am like astounded by your courage today. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And the last thing I wanted to say is that, like, because of your shares, you know, your hearts are like vibrating open, and it's a good thing, right? And sometimes we think we're super sensitive or over and emotional, but the thing is that you're just tapped into the world, to life, to your soul. And it's a beautiful thing. And that's why emotions are so, it's beautiful if we allow it to be. But when we stuff it and don't allow ourselves to, like, release it through grieving and through the expression of anger or whatever it is, then it just gets locked inside and manifests as, you know, pain in the body, to illnesses, to injuries. And that's why we need, like, each other and a community so that we can grow from these places and allow ourselves to be different and be reborn from it. So thank you so much for all of your openness and your love, and, you know, be very gentle on yourself this week, and be with yourself. It's
okay to leave this call and still be feeling like interesting feelings. Like, don't get off the call unless you really want to, and like immediately be like, okay, how do I get out of this? Right? Let's sit with it for a bit and let's just be here. And we love you.
Mhm. Yay. Thank you so much. And to all the replay viewers, we're here with you as well. Marco us if you have anything that you want to share about.
Bye,
I'll
guys.
see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.